Hello and welcome to this very first episode of the Solo RolePlayers Podcast. I'm your host, PJ, and for those of you who've come over from my other show, A Wasteland Story, welcome. And for those who are brand new, welcome too. This show's somewhat born out of that one, but you don't need to have heard it in order to feel right at home here. Solo role-playing is something of an unusual hobby. It asks you to sit down by yourself and both create worlds and play in them. When trying to explain this to non-RPG players, the best I can come up with is that it's like creating a story, including the research and world building that might go into an epic fiction, and simultaneously experiencing the story as you go. Weird, right? And on top of this, solo roleplay asks you to perform this unlikely combination without really telling you the right way to actually do it. And because of this, I've found there's a lot of uncertainty in the community from aspiring players on how to actually get started. You have to choose which setting you're going to use, decide the solo system to pair with it, and arguably the hardest part, you need to figure out how you're going to keep a record of your adventures. Do you journal, sketch a comic, scribble down flowcharts and dot points, record audio of you talking to yourself, or just sit there and play entirely in your head, or something else entirely? There is no right way, and because of that, it can be really difficult to actually get started. For many, that means looking into a lot of content creators, watching videos or listening to podcasts about how they do it, and hopefully from that, gain enough understanding and confidence to actually do it yourself. And this was my experience. I sought out content, watched, pondered, and generally put off getting started as long as I could until I figured out how I was going to do it. For me, I ended up leaning into my audio background and recorded myself playing before going back and writing a narrative script, putting it all together to produce a mishmash of actual play and narrative radio drama style audio series. And all I can say is I wish I hadn't waited so long to start. It's really been such a fun and rewarding experience. If you want to hear the result of that, you can check out my adventure in the Fallout universe in A Wasteland Story. You can search for it where you listen to podcasts, and I'll also put the link to it in the show notes. The reason I wanted to create this show is that I wanted to help and encourage people to get started quicker and not wait as long as I did. I also wanted to reach out to those content creators who inspired me to start playing and hear their stories and advice around this wonderful hobby. So that's exactly what I've done. I do also plan to maybe do some one-shot actual plays of settings and systems other than Fallout at some stage on this show, but for today I have for you a chat I had recently with one of the first creators that I came across in this community. From the YouTube channel and podcast A Man Alone, Man Alone. And here he is. Now, Man Alone, who are you and why are you alone?
Oh, what a great question. And one that, is far too embarrassing to answer. No, So, I would say that I am a strange alchemy of introversion and extroversion in terms of the, popular internet conception of those things. I'm a person who desperately needs alone time and also desperately needs an audience. And few things allow you to be both alone and performing more than running a solo RPG channel on YouTube, because it fulfills the dream of my introverted side, which is just to sit alone in a room and talk to myself. But then there is this other piece of it that I get this delayed feedback to it, because of it's buffered by like uploading and also usually time zones and stuff. And then I get to sort of like complete the interaction at my own pace. And that's how I like it. And that's really the biggest thing about my channel and why I suppose I'm alone is I do only want, I'm very selfish and self-centered when it comes to my hobbies and interests. And so my channel is 100% like what I want to do and what I like, and I'm very ornery about that.
I think that's a good thing though. I've always found that in creating stuff in general, in whatever way, you can either create stuff for other people, stuff that you think is going to be successful, or you just make the stuff that you want to hear or see or, whatever.
Yeah. It's a dangerous game, like trying to create stuff for other people. You can win that game, but you have to like max out all of the sort of levers there. I think like examples of somebody would be like a Taylor Swift, right? Like I'm just going to max out my appeal to people. And when you enter that fray, you're competing with like the most elite sort of entertainment people in the world. Whereas if you're like, well, I just like doing this thing and I'll just do it. And I may die alone and in obscurity, or there might be people that love it. Or in my case, what I was hoping for was like a small dedicated niche group of people that are into it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's deciding on what your purpose is, right? And I think that's going to be a really important factor. If your purpose is to make money, be successful, I think you said, but we'll talk about it a bit later, but you've recently started your Man Alone Networks, where you're doing some podcasting as well.
Right.
And you made an interesting point of, you said it's not that you, like you're putting it out on as a Patreon thing, and it's not that you need the money to keep the lights on necessarily, but rather that you need that feeling of responsibility in order to keep up the production of the extra stuff.
Yeah, money has a really weird effect on me. I grew up in sort of like lower middle class, and so I was always the person that like I was always the person that had $3 when everybody else had $10, I would say. And I remember as a kid one time I had a birthday party and I got like $45 in different cards and stuff. And I just sat in my bedroom and I just kept counting it over and over. And then I snuck downstairs and grabbed my mother's ironing board and I ironed each bill so that it was nice and flat. And then I counted these flat bills again and I kept ironing them till I like burned them to a crisp and they were unusable. But I think outside of me looking sort of like a greedy corporatist, I've found that in my life, it's so funny because the amount of money I have, my buying power, all that stuff is totally meaningless to me. However, being like a good capitalist subject, I am entranced by money such that if you put $3 or $4 in front of me, as is like sort of my, I think buymeacoffee.com price, that entrances me. It's like the carrot with the stick, and I go, oh, I can get $4 if I just upload this episode every week. And then once I have the $4, I'm like, who the hell cares? I don't even know why I wanted it, but it propels me forward with productivity.
Yeah, but understanding whatever it is that propels you forward with productivity and creativity especially, because creativity is a different thing, right? Not necessarily, but it can be, because you need to be creative when you don't feel creative, and you need to push through somehow.
Oh yeah, that was a nut that it took me almost 75 to 80% of my life to figure out. Is, I would say, unfortunately, and I sort of like grieve over this, is that I think I spent 80% of my life sitting in front of a sheet of paper or computer screen being like, okay, go, just waiting for that lightning strike, and it never came. And it was the realization of like, no, this is productivity. Like, you have to do a couple sketches of the Mona Lisa. And yes, I am comparing my YouTube page to the Mona Lisa, but
so you should.
You have to do a couple sketches first, and then it's not just going to flow through your hand.
This is a phenomenon that I am, and I think many creatives are intimately familiar with. I feel like I've spent the same way, whether it be writing or music or whatever else. And actually, that's something that I found that's actually the thing that drew me into solo role-playing. Or rather, it didn't draw me into it, but once I started, I realized that's what it was. And especially in the format that I'm doing for my show now, which is, it's a lot of writing,
Oh, yeah.
It's really a lot of writing. Like, I'm doing 5,000 or 6,000 words an episode, I found your show because I was sort of searching podcasts that I can listen to. Whatever I am wanting to do myself, my first stop is just like hearing other people doing it and, kind of using that as a sort of decopia to build on. And I think I was looking for something more set.
And when I heard your podcast, I was like, my God, like, is this for real? I mean, it was so good and so polished, but a lot of times there are lots of YouTube channels that do have, sort of written out solo play, and it feels very stodgy to me because it feels like an afterthought summary of what happened rather than like walking through it step by step. And that's why I really enjoyed yours and why I did this thing I do where I just kind of cold email somebody. I'm like, hey, I love it. Do it.
I really appreciated that, by the way.
Yeah. I think it's really great. It's so different from what I do.
Yeah.
It's so different. I compare it to like baking versus sort of, frying, throwing something in a frying pan,
Yeah. But you can fry a lot more in a shorter amount of time.
You could also, it burns more easily.
Yeah.
Yeah. And right. You can invest in a cake, right. To sort of torture this analogy a bit. You could spend an hour and a half on a cake, and then at the end you pull it out and it just collapses. And that is something that is, and truly is like a risk I have a hard time taking. And that's not because of any sort of laziness or aversion to that. That's based on any sort of prejudice towards that thing. It's more that that's just my personality. I love to enter that flow state and I start creating things. And then I love the risk that it could suck and that it's terrible. And there are some videos of mine that at the end of them, it's an hour and 20 minutes. And I go, well, that sucked. Like that was a waste of time. It's like, it's not totally true, but I think that's okay. In terms of the approach.
It's not a waste of time. I struggled with this the other day for another project, and I was talking to a mate about it, about the fallacy of sunk costs thing. Like it was a different podcast I was working on. I spent 5 or 6 hours doing this massive edit, trying to pull it into shape where it was something that was at a level that I was happy with. And at the end of the day, my partner in the podcast said, "Yeah, I think it's fine. We can leave it, but it's not really great." And to me, that was enough to be like, okay, that's good. Now I feel freed from it. I can delete that 6 hours of work and let's record something quickly right now and we'll just fix it. And it took 45 minutes then.
Yes.
But the episode was 5 times better because of it. And not being afraid to drop that stuff is important sometimes.
Yeah, I think every once in a while you got to kind of throw the manuscript in the fireplace because it almost is, it's not only the mental task of sort of having seen something as a draft and then reproducing it in a more sophisticated or polished way. I think there's some ritual to it. I think like you must burn stuff in the fire. We always talk about Hemingway, you have to kill your babies. And I just like have grown averse to saying that phrase as I've gotten more. I'm like, nah, I don't want to do that to babies. But I do like the idea of sort of like casting it into the fire, and having that flippancy about it is also liberating to be like, yeah, say it's the great American novel or the great Australian novel or whatever it is. Are you Australian?
I am. That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. I just want to make sure because, as an American, Australia and New Zealand are just the same place. It's New Zealand is California or something to us.
Yeah. It's all just far.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, it could be that you could throw it in the fire. And then to me, the sort of exaltation, the power that comes from the idea of being able to do that is very liberating because really, if it's just not feeling good, if it's not feeling good when it's coming out of you, then there is really no point to it, especially as I've gotten older and I realize that so many of the promises of things, we talked about money, but like fame, all those kind of things, they're so they're so vapid, they're so empty, they just don't. Anytime I've approached anything like that in my life, it's just like, oh, this either feels like anything else or it actually sucks.
Yeah, or not what I thought it was.
Yeah, it's just and I spent, so much time wanting that kind of thing when I was young. And then you kind of don't get it. You drive yourself. For me, I drove myself into like a really bad place in terms of myself and how I was sort of, don't want to say conducting my life. That sounds like was doing something morally wrong, I suppose. But it was more like I wanted that so bad that I would punish myself for not having it. And then I would have it a little bit and it wouldn't be enough, and on it goes. And so that's really why I have such a curmudgeonly insistence on my channel about this. Every it's almost every day I'll get a comment that's like, hey, editing is your friend. And I was like, well, I don't know if editing is my friend, but like, you are not. and like only
there
my
are
friends
other things
get to
you
like
can watch.
say stuff like that to me.
Yeah. No, I know that. I just want to bring it back to something there for a second. So we're talking a little bit meta at the moment. We're talking about creating stuff, right? I mean, if you consider solo role playing to be creating something, which it can be, it is to a certain extent, more or less, depending on what you're playing, how you do it, all those kinds of things. Maybe you're journaling, maybe you're creating images in your head, but either way, you are drawing creativity, using these tools, drawing creativity out of yourself to do something. That's hard for people. Like, it's a weird... I mean, creativity in general is generally pretty hard for people, but it's a weird thing in solo role playing, and I've seen it in the community, and that's how I came across your channel as well. And you were one of the influences that was really helpful for me to just get started.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And you come into this weird niche of a niche, and you begin to notice the same questions cropping up again. It's like, how do I actually start? How does it actually look like? What do you do? And that's why people are searching out content such as yours or some of the other ones, the well-known ones in the community, hopefully who will also get to interview.
I hope so.
Why is it so difficult for people to actually start playing? Like, ostensibly, at the end of the day, it's a game. There are rules. Why is it difficult for people to start, do you think?
Well, I have so many reasons that I've thought about for that. I'll say the first thing is that when you go on the solo role-playing subreddit, if you scroll for a minute, you'll see about 16 posts that say like, I just don't get it. Like, I just don't understand why you would do this. And I always find that so strange that certain things attract certain types of responses. For instance, if I went and ate like a certain type of cuisine and I didn't like it, I would find it to be so strange to then go on that subreddit and just be like, hey, just so you know, I don't like this food. It's like, okay, whatever, man. Like, and now there's something obviously distinct there that's going on. And I think what people are trying to say with that is, can somebody help me understand this? Like, help me understand what I'm supposed to be getting out of it, right? And in that way, it's almost a matter of taste. This approach to it that's kind of like a wine tasting thing. Like, oh, I won't understand this wine until someone explains this wine to me. And I am, unequivocally against that. Like, I want you to just drink that, and if it tastes good in your mouth, swallow it, and if it doesn't, spit it out and never drink it again. And so the first thing is, I think there's a huge disconnect today from people's understanding of what they like and what they don't like. It is very strange that we have so much to do and almost nobody has hobbies, because like there's so many people in competition to convince you that this thing is the best thing to do, that you lose those internal sensors that we once had. The sort of sensors that people have when they pick up they build their first battleship, like little model of that, and they go, wow, I love that. They don't need justification for that. There was no need in 1968 for my grandfather to be like, hey, go door to door. Hey, what am I supposed to be feeling as I build this tiny battleship model? Am I supposed to be feeling?
Someone reassure me. Someone justify my enjoyment of this, please, because just alone, then I can't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there is that alienation from our internal sensors. And I also think then there is the embarrassment of hearing your voice on an answering machine kind of thing, right? Like, if you're somebody who does not record yourself often, you don't hear it, you have that aversion to hearing yourself, and you say, oh my gosh, do I sound like that? My voice sounds so weird. And I think in solo roleplay, there is this aspect of being an audience to yourself, and there is a strange embarrassment that comes with that. And it's I think it's psychologically intriguing, right? Because we usually think of embarrassment as this thing of like, I'm showing a part of myself publicly that I wish to hide, and it has been unintentionally revealed. But there's no one around. I mean, by nature,
The only audience is you. Yeah,
you're the audience.
that's a really interesting point.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's people who are like the kind of solo role play voyeur, maybe the person who
Sure.
thinks that they don't get it, but there must be something here because people are doing it and maybe they want to try it, but I don't get it. What about the people who have decided, which is where I was at, decided that I really want to do this, but I just don't know how, and I don't want to do it wrong.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think there's two species of it, right? There is the side of it that's like, I, on a conceptual level, do not understand this, or do not understand the feeling state I'm supposed to get from having it. And then there's sort of a logistical piece of it, or a logistical category of people who are like, what's the first step here? If I was to paint a picture, I know the first step would be like, running my brush along this canvas. What is the first brush stroke here? And I will say that it is an activity that is performed completely for oneself and has no defined output. Like if you look at, I was on Free League forum the other day, and something I love is there'll be a thread that's like, hey, I soloed Forbidden Lands the other day. And you open this thread, and there's about 68,000 words of somebody listing their HP and their dice rolls and their inventory, and it will have no responses. And I always am like, I love that so much. I mean, I surely wish somebody would respond, but I also understand why people don't respond. I mean, what are you supposed to say to that? Like, cool. And it's because there's such a feeling to derive some sort of output from a creative endeavor. The leap of faith that I sort of encourage here is don't try to determine when you have like completed one unit of solo role play. Just go, just initiate, refer back when you need to, and just go forward. And then when you're done, you have just done something, which is something that we do so little today, which is do anything.
Do anything. What? I mean, I kind of get that philosophically, that you shouldn't require an output.
Yeah.
But I do feel like there is part of the experience, then part of the process of marking it as real, complete, progressive.
Yeah.
I think there's something there. What do you do for an output? Or does it depend on the game or the mood?
Well, so it's, when I'm doing playthroughs on the channel, I really work to have like a really high fidelity to what it actually looks like when I'm playing on my own. Because again, I think where there is a space for pods like yours, which I really enjoy, which is to see, look at this beautiful thing I have wrought, from my own imagination and dice. I want people to see what is in the sausage. And so that's why I, in the few times during the video that I'll pause, I will always, for some reason, say, I'm about to pause, even though there's no experience of the pause for the viewers. It just
and then make a stupid
right?
joke.
And so, because I want people to understand that this is not like a trick, right? It's not an Instagram influencer being like, yeah, all I do is just like, I eat a lot of chicken breast and I do 3 push-ups a day and I look like Chris Hemsworth. And, people are like, okay, dude, you're on gear. Like, you're on steroids. Like, I know we know you're all on steroids. Satire. I'm not accusing anyone of being on steroids, but I think I don't want anyone thinking I'm on steroids. I don't want people thinking that I am rolling dice or taking 37 takes to try and roll like a 17 or whatever. I want people to see this is what it looks like. The only thing, obviously, there's two things that I can't perfectly replicate. The first is I will sometimes drift into a 23-minute rules book investigation, and I try to avoid that. And then the other thing is I cannot produce the level of like sort of record keeping that I normally do, because it'll just take too much time, and honestly I don't have like the space in my work area for it.
Specifically though, that question, the record keeping that you normally do when you're playing not for the channel, what are you doing?
So I show this on a couple of my playthroughs, but one of my delights is reverse engineering a gameplay journal. And so what I will usually do is I will play the game and I will take notes. In my note taking is horrific. I mean, my writing is chicken scratch. I use tons of abbreviations and stuff. And then when I'm done with that first playthrough, which is usually a trial, I'll then look at that and I'll concept map it. And I'll notice things that come up over and over and over again. Okay. And so, for instance, I remember when I was playing Starforge the first time, I noticed that I had anxieties that I compartmentalized, that my character compartmentalized. So these things that were looming over me, that my character, even though I never said this, right, I know that my character was saying, I'm so worried about this, but I can't think about that right now. And so what I'll do then is I use that app Freeform to then sort of create almost a form-fitted or sort of, what's that called when you get a suit that's made just for you?
Tailored.
Yeah, well, it's tailored and it's bespoke, right? Like a bespoke journal or bespoke sort of player's sheet for me to record the things that are interesting to me. And in order to do that, and this is one of the things that I think is the hardest thing to cultivate, especially for new players, is trusting that you're thinking about the right things, because whatever is coming up for you while you're playing is what's coming up. And so if you keep thinking about those things, for instance, when I kept thinking about these sort of compartmentalized anxieties, I do find that that's my subconscious speaking to me. And so then I will try to journal using flowcharts and things like that that surround those sorts of things, and pursuing those anxieties and seeing the way in which those anxieties evaporate over time, etc. So there's no way for me to sort of create a system for that, because it changes every time.
Interesting.
But it is my own, I say, lingua franca. I don't write paragraphs. I did that at first and I absolutely hated it.
Yeah.
I hated it. I started dreading play.
Yeah. I think that's a common experience as well, because I feel like if you start looking into the hobby, a lot of what it is journaling, and you start getting recommended things like 1,000-Year-Old Vampire, which I haven't played. I'm sure it's great, but a lot of these games that you get recommended as a newcomer are really journal heavy.
Yeah.
And that's great for some people, but I tried that a little bit as well, and I was trying to like write paragraphs and then trying to shorten the paragraphs, and I was liking the game, but I was feeling really drawn out of it then when I had to sit down and think like a writer then at the same time as playing the game. For me.
Yeah. I'm sighing right now because like I have been thinking about this a lot, and I am starting to formulate an opinion on journaling RPGs that I think is I think will bother some people. Now, the caveat with all this is like whatever floats your boat. If you love that kind of stuff, just do it. That's the beauty of it.
If it sparks joy.
It's just that. I mean, there's no barrier to entry there. However, I have to wonder, like, is this creating an expectation of this that is in some way scaring people away from solo RPG, because they come into it and they go, oh, okay, so playing this, I have to write up a report on, my character's experience, navigating this cyberpunk city or whatever. I don't see it as a game. I just see that as so often people entering at that point and saying, whoa, this is not for me.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's any intellectual dishonesty going on. I don't think that people are saying, oh, here's another, hey, they got a big cigar in their mouth and suspenders on. They go, another journaling game, hot
Get
off the
those
press.
solo podcast dollars rolling in. The solo
Yeah.
role-playing dollars coming in.
$73 in the bag. Right. And so I don't think it's that. I guess what I'm circling around here is I view journaling solo RPGs to be about as similar to, I don't know what we want to call the other category of it, Oracle, resolution, table sort of RPGs. I view that like the same way that I would view the difference between watching a movie and sort of like looking through a photo album of someone's trip to Hawaii, right? Mm-hmm. It's like they both technically involve me sitting by myself watching visual images moving before me, but the intention of them and the sort of somatic experience of them are so different that nobody would say that, oh, looking at a photo album is just kind of a form of watching a movie. It's like it's different enough that it deserves its own genus species, in my opinion.
I think what's important here is not about how you're choosing to play. It is the actual fact of choosing a way to play and just doing it, right? And that for me, like that, I put it off for ages, like everyone does. I consumed as much content as possible, including yours. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, I just had to figure out what to do. And for me, audio is the most natural thing.
Yeah.
Mostly because I don't want to be taken out of the flow of what I'm doing and what's happening in my head to sit and write stuff then for 5 minutes. But I was also reluctant because I knew if I did record it on my phone as I was playing, for me, that wasn't going to be enough. And I'd then have to go and turn it into something. And I didn't do that for the longest time because I thought, well, that's just a lot of work then.
Yeah.
And it was one of your videos then, I believe, where you mentioned Geek Gamers, what is it, Game Master's Guide?
Yeah, the Game Master's Guide by Modifius. Excellent book.
Which I then got. And
Solo Game Master's Guide.
Game Master's Guide, that's right. Yeah. I'll link it in the show notes. And you said a line from that was really important, and maybe I'm putting words in your mouth here, but this is my memory of it, is that one of the things that the author said was, you have to understand that it's all play.
Right.
Right. And when I got the book and I read that, and I really, it's something that I inherently knew, but I felt like it gave me permission for it all to be play. And then I realized, the writing later on can be play for me. The mixing, which I enjoy doing, can be play. The going down to a map shop, because we still have them here in Germany. They print everything out on bits of paper. I managed to find a local map shop which had like hundreds of maps of all over the world, and found like a map of the west coast of the USA and like all that kind of stuff. Like it was slowing me down in collecting that stuff, but when I gave myself permission to treat that as part of the play, it was freeing in a way,
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, and you weren't, you said it exactly, but it's, you weren't putting words in my mouth. It's just I was putting Geek Gamers words in my mouth, and then you were sort of scooping them out. But that's exactly right. And I think that is probably one of the biggest technologies of solo role playing, the most important articulation of one of the most important pieces of this, which is that it's all play. Every bit of it is play. Even going to that store to look at the maps is part of play. And I would just extend that to say, like, if you hear that and you still are saying, well, why should I do that? Why should I choose to play solo RPGs, right? Because there's so many better things I could be doing with my time. I would say my question is what else is there that you wanted to be doing right now? What else did you want to do? Did you want to scroll on TikTok for hours and hours and hours and feel a profound emptiness and a sort of shuddering neuroses about the state of the world and feeling sort of, how is it that I just watched a bunch of people do like makeup routines and backflips off of diving boards, and yet I feel there's something apocalyptic about that. Did you want to do that? Did you want to fret endlessly about something about your boss said, I want to meet with you on Monday, and it's Friday and you're just going to fret? So it's like, what better thing is there? Because obviously we're in such a state right now of overstimulation that people are really seeking out these types of things that they can wall themselves in for just an hour. And solo gaming provides that opportunity. Like I say, it's just kind of sitting and spending time with yourself.
Talking about you sitting down at the table and doing stuff, what are you playing at the moment?
So if you've looked at my YouTube channel, I have currently a fixation with the Year Zero engine of Free League's Year Zero. Started with Mutant Year Zero, and I released a sort of solo, I don't even know what to call it. It's more of like an addition or an addendum to it, where I talk about the Year Zero system, and then I talk about how you can apply it more to even like Oracle roles and stuff. And it's just 13 pages called Year Zero Plus One. And I am really fascinated by this. Yeah, I'm a huge Free League stan.
Yeah.
I love everything they put out. And they are a major company that puts in an extra effort to add solo rules, which are of varying, I think, quality, but at least they're putting them out. And so currently, I've been going through a lot of the games that do not have solo components to it and attempting to come up with recipes of how to solo them. So I'm trying to do that with Symbaroum. I'm trying to do that with Mutant Year Zero. Vaesen, Dragonbane, and Walking Dead have solo rules. Forbidden Lands I haven't touched yet, just because it seems to me to be very similar to Dragonbane, and I keep hesitating to drop $50 on that because I feel like it's Dragonbane without the standees, cardboard, figures. It just feels superior to it. And I pre-ordered the Dragonbane adventure.
Yeah, me too.
New adventure modules. I'm very much looking forward to that. And I also am, part of my play now has evolved into creating things. And so I have been creating what was supposed to be a small Dragonbane solo adventure campaign. And it was just supposed to be something that I was going to pump out 10 pages, 5 days. And now about 5 months later, I have full illustrations by John World's Art. I have somebody working with me to complete the adventure modules, Druidic Habit, and it's about 47 pages right now. It is a full campaign for solo Dragonbane, and that is
very exciting.
Yes, it is, and it's got like sophisticated art. I mean, it's it's way more than I thought it would ever be, and I'm really excited about that. But it got to a point where I just kept adding to it, and finally I had to call in some help, and so I had gotten in contact with Druidic Habit just about a very cool zine that they produce on Itch, and it just seemed like in line with a lot of stuff I was doing, and I said, "Hey, could you help me out with this? I need help." It's kind of like when you're a kid and you're like, when you get it too hard, just ask for help.
Still important advice.
So yeah, that should be out. We're hoping by September.
Wow, that's awesome. And so you're going to release that on Itch or whatever?
I think we're going to release it on Drive-Thru. Yeah. I don't even know the first thing about going about and getting something like printed. And honestly, I don't know if I want to do that because, again, getting any sort of compensation for it feels motivating, but I don't have an interest to sort of min-max my profits. And so anything beyond that seems like extremely complicated to me, but who knows? If it does really well, maybe we can print something up.
Yeah.
But that is actually like a form of play for me now, is like creating these things.
That's interesting. I mean, just on a personal side note, if you can make it, if it doesn't get printed, if you can make it easy for one to print or to get printed on demand or something, that'd be much appreciated. Because I like having
so that's
the physical things.
Me too. And this is one of the things that when, people will send me messages all the time, hey, could you like promote my game and everything? And I want to help everybody, right? But just to make it manageable for me, my stipulations are I have to like it. And if I don't like it, or if I don't know if I like it, you have to provide me with a physical copy. And if you don't have a physical copy and I don't like it, you got to pay me $20 or something, whatever it is, because it's like, I need some sort of compensation for that, because otherwise in my inbox right now, I have probably 15 or 16 people that have emailed me over the last month saying, could you show my product? Could you show my product? And I'd really love to help, but I have to have something, because again, if I start doing that, I'm going to start not liking making videos. And I have 70 videos about now on my channel. I never would have gotten there if I was trying to please somebody else.
So you said that that part of your play has become creating this stuff, as part of my play has been producing the series, which is a hell of a lot more time than actually spent playing, but equally fun.
Yeah.
What are you not playing that you'd like to be? What are you reading that's interesting, exciting to you? Can you narrow it down to a couple of things?
Yeah, what a good question. So is this like well, while I think of this, can I turn the tables on you a second and ask you something, and I'll in my subconscious I'll think about your question. Are you enjoying that process of putting these episodes together?
Absolutely adoring it.
What do you like about that?
So it comes back a bit to that blank page creative thing as well. For me, it finally feels like a collaboration, a creative collaboration that I can do with myself because of the structure of there's a few elements going on, right? There's the collaboration with the dice, which is helping draw my imagination and mind into potential stories. That's fun.
Right.
But then later, there's another collaboration with myself, which was completely unexpected. And that is because I'm about 20 games in, and I'm releasing the third episode today. So I've just finished writing the third episode last week, but I'm 20 episodes in the play and in the tabletop audio recording. So that means, and that only happened by a function of me really wanting to keep playing and really getting into it, and it taking so much longer for me to write and produce the episodes.
Yeah.
But now what that means is there's like this time feedback loop about the direction of the narrative as well. And I can include subtle details in the scripting now that I wouldn't have done had I written it immediately after playing.
Yeah.
And that's a really interesting process.
So are you working from like a dossier of your write-ups of each session?
No, not really. I'm really just...
No, so you're just like, but how are you like 20 in and you're able to write about like the third?
Yeah, so the way that I write the script, I start a new episode. I do keep some notes. They're pretty minimal. Sure. It's mostly things like, the chaos factor for Mythic, maybe the weather, and really just a handful of things as a secondary record in my notebook. But my process of writing is that I pull up my my voice memo into my audio workstation, and I just listen to it, and then I pause, and then I write a paragraph, and then I listen to it, and I pause, and I write a paragraph, and I edit stuff out, and I use my past self describing the experience to prompt my script writing then.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah, and it's really fun. And it means that I can break this creativity and this writing, which is quite, it takes a lot to do, for me at least. But I can take that and I can break it down into manageable chunks. I go down most days and I sit down at a cafe or whatever, and I just hit play on the thing. I cut out all the umming and ahhing and pausing and thinking and flipping through rule books and that kind of stuff. And every time there's like a little point that's happening, I'm envisaging how is that going in the story, and then I write a chunk of text. And it allows me to then, I can do half an hour, I can do 2 hours. It doesn't matter because I can always see where I'm up to in my editing, and I can see where I'm up to in the script. And in the script, I just have the scripted stuff, and then in italics, I have first few words of the one piece of audio, last few words of the one piece of audio as just a reference. And it's a really interesting experience.
See, that is so fascinating. I cannot think of if I were to do that, it would have to be like a punishment.
I would have thought
so,
actually.
Yeah, like it's so like hearing that, I have a sense of sort of dread, and it's just a reminder of, sort of different strokes for different folks on just what interests people. And as you're saying that, though, I'm to arch back to a question from earlier of like, if a person wants to get started and, there should be a deliverable, but do they know what to journal? How do they know? I think this is concretized a little bit what I think. I think the fundamental unit of this needs to be a clock. Have you played like Starforged, Ironsworn, or any Powered by the Apocalypse game that has like clocks in it?
Not really. I'm in the process of very slowly and luxuriously building out my truths in Starforged.
Okay, so yeah, so there, a lot of solo games have these sort of what we want to call milestones, and I think that Starforged has an interesting system for it, which is you draw a circle, and if it's a simple milestone, you need to do like you have to have like 2 accomplishments to close it, right? So a vertical line and a horizontal line forming a plus closed, and then the more complicated it gets, the more like hashes that you have to put in that circle to close out that challenge. And I think if you are a person who is struggling to get started right now, on a meta level, and I know people are looking for more concrete direction here, but just this is a starting point. Figure out what your clocks are. Like, what is the thing that when you X out that circle or whatever, you are going to feel a sense of accomplishment. So if you're a person that has to have something written or something recorded, do that. If you're just a person, I think we need to be honest with ourselves. I'm a sticker person. I was the kid in grade school that was like, wait a minute, I get a sticker if I complete that. And so to be a sticker person, all I need to do is write a check mark in a box. And I always do that at the end of solo sessions. After every video, I check it off this list I have, and boom, I got my achievement unlocked.
Got your sticker.
I got my sticker. And so I'm able to subsist on that. And because of that, I have these sort of like positions on writing too much or, punishing yourself with that. But for other people, that's not a punishment. That's actually something that's going to feel very satisfying for them.
Yeah.
So it's going to take a little experimentation, but I think the first step is being dramatically honest about yourself and just being like, what motivates me? What kind of person am I? A sticker person? Do I have to get a free pizza to win it? Whatever it is, and go from there.
Or if not honest with yourself, then open to figure out what that is.
Yeah.
Because I like you, when I thought about the potential of recording it, and to me, recording it on my phone, it was the only thing that made sense because it would allow me to keep in the flow. And I'm constantly talking, while I'm thinking.
Sure.
Without having to break that flow. The thought of then going to have to go away and turn that into content, I felt exactly the same. I felt that'll be a chore, And I think it's important to note here that for me, if I didn't do if I was a slightly different kind of person, I could just record the audio or not even just have my simple notes and have the stuff going on in my head and play the game and really enjoy the game. Like, I just love playing the game. I love the crafting, all the stuff. I love the world. I love the way that the story is going, all that kind of thing. The play would be as satisfying as it is for me now. It's just that I'm getting an entirely separate satisfaction out of this other part of the project then. And the reason it comes together is a point that we started talking about at the beginning of this conversation, which is finding some kind of drive which helps you continue to create, And for me, that was like, I wanted to have 20 listeners on the podcast. And I'm like, if 20 people, I've played gigs to less than 20 people, if 20 people are there that listen and like it, that is enough for me to actually make sure I do it every month and not just, procrastinate and take too long. And that kind of thing.
Well, yeah. I mean, you're going to get more than 20 now because this is official PSA right now to all the Man Alone heads out there. I'm going to post this episode. If you do not listen to this, I am personally disappointed in you.
Yeah.
You must listen to this podcast. You want to see what it looks like, what kind of things you can create with a story. Please listen to a Wasteland story, or I will look at you very disapprovingly.
I appreciate that.
And I want people to listen to yours too, like on a serious note, because it is a wonderful exemplar of the what can be created with this process, right? It's not just like chicken scratch notes. I mean, it can be that, but this is the power of just believing that your thought is right. Because I see it, even though it's, post-produced and everything, you make choices, you interpret things, and you move forward with that. And it's like so many times when we first start solo playing, we're like, well, I rolled up this word and it says canary. And I'm playing a sci-fi game. There's nothing that a canary has to do with a spaceship. So I'm just going to re-roll. No.
Make it work.
What's a canary? What is your interpretation of a canary? A spaceship called Canary.
Yeah.
A person, codenamed Canary, who comes, what is that?
Yeah.
It's right.
Yeah, that's really good advice, I think. Trusting yourself and and giving yourself permission to just move on. Also, I found really helpful giving yourself permission to ignore the rules sometimes,
Yeah.
If you're flowing and you're going, just keep going. Like, I'm not going to roll for that. Actually, this is cool.
I'm gonna hit two birds or two canaries with one stone here, and I'm gonna answer your question. I'm also going to ask something that I did want to talk to you about. So one of the things that I actually want to play desperately is the Fallout game, and I want to, but I can get the PDF, but it is nigh impossible to get the physical game in the US. And I can't believe it because I have passed it on game store bookshelves over and over and over again. And I always said, you know what? I'll pick that up. It's Modifius. Like, they're going to have a copy of it. But then the Amazon show came out and everybody bought all of them up. So they're out of stock online. They're not in the stores anymore. And I can't find it. But this is what I wanted to ask you is what the reviews of it that I saw were not good. That it was a monstrosity, that it was an overuse. It was sort of bolting on the D20 or what is it, the 2D20 system, what if it is that it was over influenced by what is the company that produces Fallout?
Bethesda.
Yeah, Bethesda, that it was too much of like them having influence over it and wanting it too closely to mimic the game. And so when I heard your podcast and I was like, this is someone who's really enjoying this. Have you read any of those reviews, or are you shocked by me saying that, or what's your reaction to that?
Sort of neither. I sort of stopped reading reviews and watching trailers a while ago in my life, which was quite freeing.
That's a good idea.
And I guess I can sort of see that. Like, I come from Fallout 1 and 2 as well. I mean, I played the newer ones.
Oh, wow. Those Fallout games.
Yeah, but I wanted it to be more in that sort of setting than the modern things where you run around and you pick up 1,000 metal helmets that you somehow strap to your back and
right.
and just go and sell everything. That's not what I wanted. I wanted it to like, I had an idea how I wanted it to feel, more like more survival, like the old games, and like to me the world should be. And I have absolutely no problem just ignoring the stuff in the book that I don't like and just doubling down on the stuff that I do. Like, they do lean a lot into Fallout 3. I think it's quite good. I think the rules are really good. I think there are, as always, some issues in the original core book, a lot of which have been added to and improved by supplements now. There's a huge fan base out there who are making a lot of really interesting and useful tools and content. And for me, I'm just picking and choosing the stuff that I really like. I love the modding weapons. I even got to the point where I found in one of the new supplements, there's a way that you can actually identify what all the items of junk you are finding are and what kind of materials they break down into, and then figure out how am I going to make my scope for my pistol better. Well, I'm going to need glass. I'm going to maybe need some leather. I'm going to,
Yeah.
down to that granular detail of it. But they even say in the rule book, especially if not in the core, then certainly in some of the supplements, they say there's a lot of stuff here. Feel free to rip it out unceremoniously. Feel free to cobble things together. Like, they actually encourage you to do that, certainly in the later stuff. And so for me, it's really excellent. I mean, whether it's shoehorning in the 2D20 system, I don't know. This is kind of my first RPG, so I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting too, because if you don't care about that stuff, right, you're more or less able to judge it on its own merits. And it was the same thing with the Walking Dead universe game. Is there was a big reaction to it because people are like, it doesn't include the graphic novel stuff. It's got AMC all over it, and they weren't able to just see the game, right? And I think it was refreshing. It's refreshing now to hear you say that, because I was really interested in that, because in my opinion, the crafting system is one of the most appealing things about Fallout. Although you're right, it does kind of go into hyperdrive in the recent games, but I think that in a lot of ways, that is the next step for solo gaming. That's a piece that we have not seen well implemented yet. And I'm working on a video right now of like some predictions of where I think solo gaming is going to go. Because right now, I can tell you that almost every solo game that comes out is like one of two things. It's a journaling game, or it's like an Oracle procedural in one way or another, sort of hex crawl. And the field is ripe for innovation. And I want to see more homesteading, more resource crafting, more of those elements that come in the Fallout game that I think could be brought in a good direction. So I will continue my search for it.
Absolutely.
I'll have to find a friend who's very kind and wants to send me something from another country where it's available, but I'll figure something out.
Yeah. I mean, I saw it in the game shop about 100 meters away from my house yesterday.
Oh, that must be so nice.
Well, it's funny though, because they have the English version, which is like this thick, well, whatever, and the German version is like this, because they're just, the number of words and the length of their words is
7 syllables.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And otherwise, when I'm not playing, I will say a couple. I mean, there's just a couple of games that have been sitting in front of me, and I've desperately wanted to play, but I never am able to sort of kickstart it into gear. I've wanted to play Index Card RPG and try to figure out some more soloing options on that. Dungeon World, and I will say, just looking at my shelf right now, probably one is Zweihander. I really want to solo Symbaroum. I like salivate over that. And if you liked Dark Souls, I think Symbaroum is a very good analogy, or sort of same. It rhymes, let's just say, in theme. But my deep dark secret is when I started this channel, or my channel. We're not on my channel right now. Okay. I'm sorry. That's how arrogant I am. But when I started my YouTube channel, I started out with a playthrough of, I adapted Star Trek Captain's Log, which is a solo Star Trek game, and I adapted it into my favorite universe, which is Warhammer 40K, and I did 3 episodes of that, and then I kind of made a few like interstitial episodes just to kind of like mess around a little bit and give some opinions and stuff, and people were attracted by those so much, I started going in this other direction. But almost every time I log into YouTube, I see it's like the first one that comes up is I called it Inquisitor's Log number 3, and I'm going, I never did number 4, and that video ends now like almost a year old with me being like, all right, well, we'll see what happens next time, and those characters are just like floating in oblivion.
It's suspended.
So yeah, I would like to come back to that at some point.
Man Alone, we're running out of time, I think, here. This has been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I really hope that we can speak again, perhaps.
Yeah. Once you run through the other folks, once you get Dungeon Delve on here, Geek Gamers, then we can kind of say, wow, what a whirlwind it's been. Yeah. So we'll put a pin in this moment and come back.
Exactly. To it. I do want to point out though, you do some stuff. You've got your YouTube channel, which we've talked about. You haven't talked about your Man Alone Network stuff yet so much, but how can people find you and what you do, and why would they anyway?
Yeah, so they would, because they have an unhealthy, parasocial relationship with me. And we've talked about this several times, but if they're going to insist on continuing this relationship, and supposing that we are all best friends, if you didn't get enough Man Alone, Man Alone Networks Corporate LLC is my podcast. It is a members only podcast. It is on buymeacoffee.com /Man Alone. And originally I was selling the first 50 memberships for $3 a month. Those have kind of filled up. But luckily I'm a pretty cheap date, and the monthly membership is only going to $4 a month. And with that, you will not only get audio only versions of all my YouTube videos, but you will also get a weekly members only podcast featuring my partner BB, who has to suffer me all the time, as well as friends like Mr. 55, who is another gamer who visits and pops in on that. And so that's like a little bit of a deeper dive, a little bit more of a discussion. But really, the people who like my YouTube channel, they like it because it is more of a podcast flow. It's very low editing, more just stream of consciousness. And so if you like that and you're hungry for more and you want to be part of a special club that others can't get into, that's where you do it. For $4 a month, you can't buy anything with that anyways. So you might as well just invest there.
Thank you, Man Alone, and thank you for being one of the voices in this wonderfully weird and niche community that is out there helping people get involved and start playing.
Thank you for doing this podcast, and please keep going with this. I think this is a great idea, and it's the right direction. It's going to go places.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining me today on the Solo RolePlayers Podcast. If you'd like to get in touch with me, you can email me at thesoloroleplayerspodcast@gmail.com. You can find links to our guest, Man Alone, in the show notes, as well as links to A Wasteland Story if you want to hear how I solo. Next time on the show, we'll be hearing from another content creator in the solo RPG space. And so until then, happy role-playing.